Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we get together on a weekly basis and tackle things from the world of football and/or soccer that we thought were interesting. I'm Tom Rennie of TalkSport, SiriusXM fame. Alongside me is Brian Dunseth, counter-attack presenter on SiriusXM FC, star of literally every single soccer broadcast across America, and a man whose Botox is so exceptional we've had to rub Vaseline on his lens so you're not shocked into stone like you just looked at the Medusa. It is Brian Dunny Dunseth. Hey, mate, you all right?
Yeah, I just want you to know this filter is very TikTok-y. So it looks fantastic. I'm not good, Rennie. I'm not fucking good. Sorry, Tim. Man United are terrible. I don't know what happens in Europe, but I would like that European, I don't know, bravado to show up every once in a while because our throwaway bet turned horrifically sideways as I was on the plane home from Portland Sunday morning, and I woke up and I was like, oh, the game's on. Jumped on the old Peacock app and, yep.
Yeah. No, great.
Resigned myself to a nice, I'm going to do it a little bit differently, though, this time. I'm going to break out a birthday box.
Because you have to do it so many times.
Well, you know, Stranger Things, right? The show, let me see.
Yes, I've seen the show Stranger Things, yes.
So they did a collaboration with First We Feast and the Hot Sauce and Heatonist that does hot ones. So I'm going to open up this one. It's not going to be the last dab. It's going to be, I wanted to taste this anyways, but I haven't broken it open.
Well, should we say, whilst you're opening the hot sauce, that at the end of last week's show, I remembered, literally as we were saying goodbye, that Man United, Dunny's team, were facing West Ham, my team. And in the past, we have done a hot sauce bet. I lost the first one, but Dunny has a go at me for just having some ketchup. And I don't have a very high spice tolerance.
It's legitimately ketchup.
It still screwed me up a bit because I'm quite weak. So we did it again, and Dunny lost, and he made the mistake of taking a dab of the hot sauce at the start of the podcast and then spent the rest of it salivating into his microphone.
Well, I did like 3 different. I was like, this is fine, like an idiot.
You went too far. And so literally at the end of the show, I was like, oh, do you know what? I owe you one because you did one earlier in the season, and that was the dodgy penalty that David Coote gave, and he never refereed again. I think it was that bad penalty decision that made him not referee again. I'm not sure the other reasons were involved. Anyway,
well, that was the Eric Ten Hag last game too.
That was it. It was everyone.
So it was celebratory hot sauce. Yeah, it was celebratory.
So you did at the start of the program. So I thought I would need to do it on today's program as like recompense. I assume we might have to do it like once per season or whatever. But no, they were so bad that you're going to have to do it again. West Ham won comfortably at Old Trafford. A 9th home defeat in the league this season. A 17th loss in the league in the one season. And you're now...
Not as bad as Big Ange Postecoglou and Spurs.
That's true. But you're now below us in the table. And so, Dunny, you've made some chicken wings and you've got a dab in at the start of the program. So what are you having here?
So I'm going to go through all 3. And
you're going to do 3 again. You're going to dab 3.
I'm going to do one at a time. I think we're going to do the escalation of heat as I'm shaking and I'm taking this. Ooh, that looks
in one sitting. Or
that looks very last dabby.
Should we do one per topic?
Sure, let's do it that way. Yeah. So we can build into. Oh my God, that looks really hot. Get back down there.
Describe it for the listeners. You can watch this on YouTube if you're listening, so you can watch Dunny get increasingly redder. He'd be as red as me by the end of this program.
Oh, the Hellfire Club is going to be more last dabby. Okay, I get that. So again, little Stranger Things. So you can see Stranger Things on this one. I mean, Stranger Things. I love you. Great show. Heatonist. Last dab. Love you guys too. So feel free. Send us some stuff. So this is called Surfer Boy Pizza. So it's all kind of collaboration. If you've watched Stranger Things, Surfer Boy Pizza makes an appearance. So I got my chicken. Got my little nuggie.
So you're pouring on the chicken.
Yeah.
So
get it up. So I'm gonna show you enough.
Okay.
So I'm not a wuss. Like a good.
That's quite. That's a health. That's like a little fingerful. That's like a little baby finger.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You're happy.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
That is delicious.
So this is like we've just seen the lineups, and it could go either way. It seems quite moderately.
Yeah,
happy.
I'm trying to find the Scoville rating on this one.
0? Are you having tomato ketchup?
It doesn't. It's not bad. Not bad. Okay. I like it. All
right.
Okay.
You styled it out. All right, we'll do topic 1, and then before topic 2, we'll warm it up again. And topic 1 is Man United, West Ham, and also Tottenham, Crystal Palace, because I want to ask you about the game and about the Man United of it all, because obviously that's very funny. But also I just I'm struggling with this, right? Because a couple of years ago, like West Ham made the Europa League semi-final and they
Yeah.
lost to Eintracht Frankfurt, who were a very good team under Oliver Glasner. And those two games were incredibly close and intense. Certainly the first leg that I went to was great. And like I was going back through recent Europa League winners, thinking what a great run to the final, how difficult those games were, how good these teams were.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching this Man United team this weekend be wiped off the field by this awful West Ham team.
Did you
Like,
say sorry, team, for sorry, Tim, for that one?
wiped off. Do you have to
Oh,
say
I thought
that?
you said off.
No,
Sorry, Tim.
nobody would say that. That's not a phrase.
Well, I mean, it's you.
It's off the floor. Sorry, Tim. That makes no sense. I don't know how much that costs either.
Did you say that with Daichi?
No, we'll get to that. I was too
Oh my
afraid.
God,
I
I'm
was
so
too afraid
jealous.
to have a deep chat, but he was.
I'm
He
so
was. I watched him
jealous.
hold court. It was amazing. Anyway, and they were like the goal, the first goal, is like a 40 pass move from West Ham from their defensive line to like the goal. Like West Ham can't do 7 passes in a row. You combine that with like the Crystal Palace game against Tottenham at the same time on the Sunday, where like a friend of mine has got Tottenham tickets and we'd offered them. He was like, because my brother-in-law's Tottenham fan, I know some Tottenham fans, I'm from the area a bit more. And my mate was like, oh, look, I've got 2 tickets. I'm not even asking for money. I just don't want them to go to waste. Do you know anyone that want them? I got in touch with like 6 people who all said, I do not want to go to this game. I want to pretend it's not happening. We're going to lose at home comfortably to Crystal Palace, which came to fruition. And I guess the question is like, how can these two teams be so pitiful in the league? And yet I think about the Frankfurt away victory for Tottenham. I think about beating Bilbao, obviously, for Manchester United. They can win
Yeah.
really big games and play really well. But then a couple of days later, they look almost like they'd taken a dab of LSD before the game and then pushed out onto the field. Like, how is this happening?
Yeah. Again, my buddy Haraya, Dave in Michigan, we were having this conversation because he was pointing out how bad both Man United and Tottenham are. There's a couple things at play, right? Number one, we should acknowledge that with the Champions League format changing, that once you ended in that third position in the group stage, now that we've gone to a single table, there's no parachuting down to Europa League. So you have completely watered. Well, I don't know if that's the case because they qualified for Europa, but I don't know if you watered down the competition, but you certainly haven't added to the competition to make it that much more difficult in Europa League, right? That falling into Europa League by maybe stuttering in Champions League. So there is a lack of quality that's dropping into the knockout round. Number two,
The recent
we
winners
talked.
have all come from the Europa League, though, right? Atalanta won a Champions League club. I don't know about Sevilla the year they won it. Frankfurt were as well Europa, I think.
I should have taken a look because I can't off the top of my head. I've got
But I
too much
suppose you
nonsense.
could meet Champions League in the semi-final, quarter-final, round of
100%.
16. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
harder
yeah,
all the
yeah.
way through. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And it was almost like at least we still have Europa League, right?
Yeah.
And so then you knew there was going to be some powerhouses that inevitably were going to come down. Like you knew that you were going to come up against an AC Milan type feel, or you were going to come up against, to your point, an Atalanta, or, like, I don't know who else we could throw into that equation. But
Well, Chelsea and Arsenal have done it in recent
maybe an
years.
RB Leipzig, something like that. So it would be fascinating, more interesting. I think also the reality is that, I think when you show a red card VAR intervention with Vivian pulling back Hoyland in real time, not called, in secondary look, red card changes the trajectory of the tie.
Yeah.
And then losing the Williams brothers in the second leg, and then all of a sudden, things go sideways. The other part of this conversation is Spurs probably gets to the final for a much easier path, even though they did go through Frankfurt. Eintracht wasn't the same team that Eintracht was a couple of years ago. And because you're not coming up against these Champions League teams that are parachuting in. The other part of this conversation is the 3 teams are already relegated, right? They've been relegated for the better part of 7 to 8 weeks. The extraordinary run of Vitor Pereira and Wolves pulling themselves out of that conversation, points then pints, and knowing that these 2 teams are so far off the pace of making Europe that they've thrown all of their eggs into the basket of European competition. So we've seen it with the rotation policy. I believe it was 8 changes coming off the game, off the turf from Bodo Glimt. You've lost James Madison. You're highly concerned about all of, the players that are redlining. On top of this, for Manchester United, by endearing goal, Luke Shaw, Yoro comes off injured. Mazraoui's played virtually, feels like every minute of every game. Harry Amos gets a start. Kobe Mainu gets a start. He's been on the outside looking in for a while. Mason Mount, who in the second leg against Bilbao looked cocky Chelsea Mason Mount all of a sudden. And then Now he's still trying to find his legs and figure this out. The, I get all this. I get the narrative. I understand it. It's haters and whatever. It's fine. No problem. But I
It's
use the
weird though. It's
no, it's
weird as
weird.
well.
Well, I use, and again, different, completely different. Remember when Roberto Martinez was with Birmingham City? They win an FA Cup, but they get relegated.
Wigan, yeah.
Or sorry, Wigan, Birmingham City later. They're two different things, right? Completely different, not like for like, not apples for apples. But it just shows. Excuse me, I just had a hiccup.
Oh, here we go.
It's
There's
just
that spicy sauce hitting.
kicked in the back of the throat. It just goes to show you that there's just unique circumstances. And in the moment where we've heard predictive Big Ange Postecoglou, I mean, we laughed and we all laughed. And now he could seriously win a trophy in his second year. Talk about top bands. On the flip side, we're watching Ruben Amorim week in, week out, tell his truth, and then throughout the rest of the week, justify why his truth is true, which is really annoying.
Well, on that, I mean, is he being too honest in these
Yes.
post-match interviews? Because,
Yes.
like, some of the things he said this week were, we're not scared of losing games as Manchester United. If the poor form continues, I might leave before next season, whether that's sacked, whether that's resigned. I don't know exactly what he's implying. But, like, why is he saying that? Like, who is that for? Is there a better way to handle this, and how would somebody else handle it?
I'm not sure. I think he's a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve. I don't think he's out there maliciously manipulating the press, right?
No.
Like the
He
Jose
should be.
Mourinho quote coming this week from one of the Turkish reporters who was asking him about his rotation policy and the amount of people that he's been introducing in his starting 11. He responded with, "I take 26 coins and I throw them in the air, and whatever sticks to the table with their faces on, that's how I pick my starting 11. And I'm out there partying every night in Istanbul, and I don't care about, me and my coaching staff are having fun." Like, he's not manipulating him. I think he's trying to tell in a similar manner in which we talked about Ralph Ragnick and open heart surgery. I think he's in that vein of form, as opposed to Eric Ten Hag. Every time he spoke, it didn't align with what we were visually seeing. So, and I think Big Ange Postecoglou really does enjoy the manipulation of the press. I think he really enjoys sticking it back to him. Like, oh, you're going to pull one over on me. You're going to be a to me. Sorry, Tim. You're going to try to manipulate me. You're going to twist everything I say. Well, then I'm just going to have fun with it. Like, where I'm not going to give you anything of what you want. I'll take your question. I'll manipulate it into whatever answer I want to give, and we'll go from there. I think for Ruben Amorim, I don't want to say it's an immaturity, because I think he's really, really intelligent. I think he knows what he's doing, but I think this job is even bigger than he ever probably could imagined. And there's no way I can't see a world in which he can actually verbalize the exact reasons why this has gone so oddly horrifically sideways in Premier League action. And yet they're the only team in Europe in all three competitions that have gone unbeaten. I mean,
It doesn't make sense.
It's
Like, it
a
doesn't make
player
sense.
thing. It's a player thing. It's not a manager thing.
Do
It's
they
a player
not care? I guess is the question. Like Arne Slot made the point a couple of weeks ago. Was it last weekend when Liverpool won the league and they go to Chelsea, and he was a bit like, yeah, the players weren't quite 100%, but of course they're champions. I guess you can let it go a little bit. But like, if you're Bruno Fernandes, who's been carrying this team, or you're Harry Maguire, or you're whomever, like you mentioned it earlier on, there is no risk here. 14th to 17th don't make a blind bit of difference. And so do they just literally, is this just contractual obligation here? They're phoning it in and they want to get this done by tea time.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly suggests it based on performance. Again, I can't separate the emotion of being a former soccer player, a former player, and as a Manchester United fan, I can't break this. Like, I'm in this crazy circle of, and this goes back to even during Christmas time when you and I were predicting foolishly Chelsea was going to win the title, or at least make a push for the title. I went to Cabo and I was telling you, between all the cup competitions and stuff, I go back to the room and I'd literally walk away at 45 minutes in, because I was like, I'm in Cabo San Lucas. Why am I not down at the pool drinking? Like, this game's making me want to drink even more. So, I mean, I walked away on 3 different occasions because I was like, this isn't going to ruin my vacation. So, I, I can't figure it out. I think common sense would tell us that there's pride, but there's not pride in the performance, at
Yeah.
least is what we expect from terms of results, and that everybody knows. And by the way, so crazy that they could use an FA Cup win against Man City to catapult them into Europa League, and Europa League potentially this win could catapult them into Champions League when in these last 3 seasons everything's gone so horrifically sideways in the Premier League competition.
If they don't win the Europa
Oh
League
God.
next Wednesday, and they
God.
finish 17th or 16th, they're currently 16th, they could be 17th. Does he deserve to stay, Amorim? Like I'd taken your point previously that like it's all about process, but like this has been a fucking disaster in the league. Sorry,
Yeah.
Tim.
Yeah. Um, I can't see a world in which they make a decision to go in an opposite direction because I don't think they can afford it.
Mm.
I think they back themselves into a corner with Eric Ten Hag and the new contract extension. So you're eating what, 12 million bucks between he and staff. The Dan Ashworth failure. I mean, that's got to cost them, what was it, 2 million to get him out of Newcastle, plus now you got to pay out whatever the contract was after going in a different direction. They virtually cut everything they possibly could cut behind the scenes from ownership perspective. They're talking about spending all this money on a brand new stadium and what the next 5 to 10 years are going to look like for Manchester United. And in the meantime, outside of Dorgu, they've got to figure out a way to capitalize on distressed assets. I mean, they capitalized as much as they could on Mason Greenwood. You've got to figure out Jadon Sancho, or does Chelsea just say, we'll eat the 5 million because that player's not worth the 30 to 40 million? Marcus Rashford probably raises his level of whatever the 40 million lock-in was, because maybe if Aston Villa makes the Premier League, they can activate it, or excuse me, makes Champions League qualification, they can activate it and agree to a new wage structure with Marcus Rashford, but I can't see him walking away from 340 a week. And then on top of that, you've got to figure out the Anthony situation, which he's a distressed asset, but absolutely is raised. By the way, Anthony could, I think, theoretically still win a Europa League medal based on group stages and win a Conference League medal if Real Betis wins against Chelsea.
Let's hope they
So,
do.
and then you've got to figure out Lindelof. You got to figure out Luke Shaw. You got to figure out all of these guys kind of near the tail end of their contracts. I don't think they can afford to go to walk away from Ruben Amorim.
Unless, of course, they're in the Europa League final, and if that's the case, then or they've won the Europa League final. If that's the case, then maybe they can kind of do what they want because they've had a lot more money because they'll be in the Champions League. We'll see how it plays out. One final bit: how much do you want Spurs? Without being the Man United homer of it all, how awesome would it be to see Spurs win it? Postecoglou goes, "I didn't give a shit about the league, mate. Sorry, Tim. Won this trophy though," and he takes the mic and he's just like, "Good luck, everyone. Good luck being Tottenham forever. Bye," and just wanders off at the final. Like, how amazing would that be? Right, you're ready. You're ready with hot sauce number 2?
Yeah, this is Benny's Burgers. This is another Benny's Burgers. I'm not sure. They don't have the Scoville rating on here. So,
well, judging by the last one, it was 0.
that's really good too.
Yeah.
My God, this is delicious. This is like the stuff you put on like a burger.
So it's ketchup. Again, you're doing double ketchup.
Oh, that's really, really good. No, it's got a good kick to it.
This
But
is
that's
you eating these sauces is as disappointing as Man United losing the Europa League final. That's what it is.
You
It's a
just
blow.
want to see me in pain. That's all you want to
Yes,
see.
that's what this was for. It wasn't
Okay,
for
well,
you
let's
be
go to
happy.
Hellfire then.
No, we'll wait.
No, we'll wrap it up. I'm ready.
Time. No, we've got time. We've got time.
No,
We'll build up to it. Well, while you're mulling over doing that, a bit of light housekeeping. If you're enjoying the program, get in touch with us on social media. Find us on Twitter, which is X now. Find us on Blue Sky. Follow us on YouTube as well. Subscribe to the program on YouTube. Search for Week in the Tackle, and you'll find our shows in video form. Leave a comment underneath and leave your questions underneath. You can also subscribe on any podcast platform. So if you like the show on Spotify, do it on Apple as well, vice versa, and leave us 5-star reviews wherever you possibly can, and leave us written reviews as well. Send them to us directly on Blue Sky or indeed on YouTube in the comments, in Spotify in the comments, and we'll read out the best ones. Right, you're ready.
Good with this one?
That is a monumental lump of hot sauce. That's a monumental lump.
Bad idea.
You've been Timmy Toughnuts here.
Yep, Timmy Toughnut.
You've timmied it. That was too big of a lump for a significant chili sauce.
It's in the back of the throat.
Yes, yeah. What about the roof of the mouth? How is it there? Is it hitting nice? Hitting as nice as that little
It's
Tommy
just in the
Suchek
back.
back heel.
Bastard.
Yeah, what a player.
That turnover when Jared Bowen was
Oh,
moving, I was like,
J-Bos.
when Kudus, I thought Kudus was going to get sent off, by the way.
Why? What do you do? For not being able
Tackle.
to make a pass.
Yeah, well, the tackle.
Even the second goal, he won. What you win the ball back from Wan-Bissaka, dribble him forward, and he still couldn't make a simple
I
pass.
pay off my debts, okay? Pay
Yeah,
off my
but I mean,
debts.
you've done it now. I feel like you've. We need something stronger for you. Maybe you should eat a full Carolina Reaper pepper on
It is
its own
really hot.
next
This is,
time.
I
Is
don't know if
it?
this is like last dab hot, but it's really, really, really hot.
You're standing out too well. I regret it now.
I mean, I can go get last dab. You want me to go get last dab?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Rather just rattle through the show.
I can feel my eyes sweating.
Do you still have tear ducts because of all the surgery?
No,
No.
they took those out.
Yeah, that's for the best. For
Yeah.
the best, really.
It was
Well,
part of the insurance scam.
well done. You're so tough. Look at how Timmy Tough Nuts you are. Oh,
Oh.
nothing to me.
I'm actually, yeah, you can feel it
Oh. Okay. All right.
in my nose.
I'll introduce the next bit. Bearing in mind that sniffing is a deeply unpleasant thing to hear for people in their headphones and headsets. People listen to this walking the dog. You know, they'd have got that in their ears.
I was listening to this great podcast the other day, and the guy had a tick in the back of his throat.
Oh.
He kept going,
Oh,
and I couldn't stop focusing on it.
it's so annoying. It is so
Oh,
annoying.
okay,
Okay. Better?
yeah. This has got a secondary kick I wasn't prepared for.
Okay. All right.
I should have let the first one settle a second.
You should have done. We've all made that mistake before.
F- me. Sorry.
You end up 3 days later at a skip in Liverpool. We've all been there. Anyway, speaking of Liverpool, what a weird segue that was. Oh, yeah, you don't look well. Let's talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold because I mean, we touched on this before, but I do think what happened this weekend was genuinely quite shocking. And look, if you haven't seen it, he comes on in the second half, and firstly, there's a lot of really loud chants for Conor Bradley, who's going to be his replacement. He was the person he was replacing on the field at the time. Secondly, there was a lot of chants about Steven Gerrard, who, let's remember, would have gone to Chelsea if he had his way during his career, but whatever, he stayed.
I mean, he also went to, I mean, not for nothing, for shits and giggles, sorry, Tim, he went to LA Galaxy.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, but what about the transfer fee? Like, whatever. And so, like, and then when he comes on, the booing is just so loud. And I've seen a few like defenses of it, or people trying to explain it. And I feel like the explanation is, yeah, but you've got to think about these fans who are like irrational because they're football fans and like
Tribal.
You're leaving my tribe to go to another tribe. And it's like, you won't get it because you're not Liverpool. It's like, no, every fan and every fan base has the potential to and is full of people who are dicks. Right? Sorry, Tim. That's fine. If you're booing Alexander-Arnold, you're being a dick. You're being a dick because this is my team and you're leaving. But like the element of it I'm not quite getting here, there's a gap in my sort of information here, is like lots of players have left Liverpool on a free at the end of their contract and they have gone on to other clubs, sometimes rival clubs, and not had this sort of treatment. I mean, there was one I saw on social media, this guy Laurie, here's one for you. He said, if we give Trent any form of guard of honour after the final game, I'll be disgusted. I don't want him at the parade. I don't want to see pictures of him with the trophy. I don't want any farewell interviews or tribute videos. Let him leave with nothing. And that was a Liverpool fan on social media. Look, Twitter is a hellscape. But like you heard from the booing, the people do have that opinion. Yeah. And you could see that Alexander-Arnold was surprised. I think he expected a smattering. I don't think he expected to be overwhelmingly negative when he came on. Andy Robertson, speaking afterwards, seemed quite surprised and disappointed. Same with Virgil van Dijk. I'm sure with everyone in the dressing room.
But Virgil felt like he was more. He didn't want to take a stray bullet. Where Andy Robertson felt like he was like, hold on a second, this is my best mate. We've achieved extraordinary things. Like that was bang out of order. Like it felt like Andy Robertson was more willing to come out and protect Trent than Virgil being like, not my guy, not my problem, like whatever.
But like, I didn't. I mean, to be fair, Van Dijk is staying. Robertson might be going. He's being put in a tough position because you can't say, yeah, that they're a bunch of dicks. I don't know why they're doing it. Yeah. But like, what on earth is this? Like, it doesn't make sense. Even in the quota of like, the only thing is, oh, we didn't get a transfer fee, right?
Yeah.
But who gives a? Sorry, Tim. Like, I don't get that.
Yeah, I listen again. I'm a United guy, right? So I have zero skin in the game for this. As I'm watching this, shocked. Like really shocked. But I guess it's modern football, right? But there's like only so many one club players. And whether it was Jamie Carragher or Steven Gerrard, even though he did end his career with the LA Galaxy, like there's these iconic moments, right? This isn't Phil Coutinho.
Hmm.
This is more Genie Wijnaldum. But it's different, right? Because he's only been at this club. He only knows this club. And I thought he was very genuine with the way that he announced this. What's interesting is I think there's nuance to this conversation. First and foremost, I don't know how Liverpool allowed all three players to wind down to the last 18 months of their deal. Number
Yeah.
two, Jurgen Klopp to Arne Slot. It's a completely different time frame. The departure of Jurgen Klopp, then with Michael Edwards' return, different infrastructure, FSG. God, that's still hot. Um, and then with Arne Slot trying to figure out he's coached up this group of players, right? While every other team has had significant setbacks and hiccups. Um, whether it was Michael Edwards trying to initiate the conversation with Trent Alexander-Arnold, his agent, which I believe might be his brother,
Hmm.
um, that could be real. I think there could be a lot of truths because when people are like, no, he wouldn't step to the table with his agent and his brother. It's like, well, is this the same Michael Edwards and leadership group that Mo Salah elected to walk away from going to the bus and have an impromptu conversation with media members about how disappointed he was with the lack of a conversation? I mean, for Virgil van, like these deals could get done really, really quick. And for whatever reason, as you're parsing through the technicalities, it's taken a lot longer. I mean, the fact that you've allowed anybody to get down to the last 6 months, and by the way, maybe, just maybe, this player wants the opportunity. He's seen a Conor Gallagher, or he's seen a Jude Bellingham, or he sees these guys that are, it's now, Tammy Abraham or a Chris Smalling, all of these guys that have left the Premier League and gone to foreign countries. Maybe there's something alluring about a different culture, a different life, a different
Yeah.
language, all of these things. All of these things can be true. Um, the whole thing about not like somebody called into the or somebody wrote into the show on Sirius. Well, look at McAllister. McAllister re-upped his deal so Brighton could get some money. Okay, great. You could say that with Matthias Cunha. You could say that with a bunch of people, but don't think that it didn't benefit Alexis McAllister at the moment,
He got paid.
right? They're all getting paid. So
Yeah.
the tribalism, I understand it all. From my perspective, I can understand why you're disappointed, but I honestly feel like well, a couple different directions to go on this. The disappointment is, I think, less about where he's going. I think it's more about the fact that he's choosing to leave for whatever the reasons are behind the scenes, because Liverpool fans recognize what they're building.
Hmm.
And subtract those 10 difficult days against PSG and Newcastle United in the cup final. This is a treble competing team. Like if they would have gotten past PSG, we would have expected them to still compete for a Champions League title. If the game had gone their way and they would have lifted the cup a few days later and were in line for a treble, like this group is in a really good space, right? And they're just in the infancy of whatever this looks like for Arne Slot. So in an odd way, I think that's a sign of respect as I try to pull this around. Is I think the booing is a recognition of how important he's been and how important he could be. And I think that's one of the tribalism reasons for the boos that we heard, because I think they all recognize that this group could be something special. And the fact that Mo
Hmm.
resigns, that Virgil resigns, and that you're choosing to leave, like, why would you do it now, considering we're that much closer, to being the penultimate treble contending team and being in that 4 or 5 years of what Man City, that's what it feels like, that this group could be like Pep Man City
Hmm.
competition.
That feels
I,
too philosophical to me. That feels too philosophical and
you're
well
probably
thought
right.
out.
Yeah, you're
I think
probably right.
this feels more like a gut reaction. This feels more
Couple
guttural.
pints
This
and
feels emotive.
you. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's a bit more like that. Like I feel like I never played, as you know, but like if I got the chance to play for West Ham 500 games or win the Champions League with Real Madrid, in my mind I'd much rather play 500 games for West Ham because I don't care about Real Madrid. But like when you're in the boots of an actual footballer whose career is at absolute best 20 years, very likely to be less than that, but he came through young, maybe he plays to 38. Yeah, fingers crossed he does. But he might be a bit like, I've got 5 years left at the very top level. He's played 370 plus games for Liverpool, 373. He's won the
Hmm.
Champions League and the Premier League twice. And like, there is nothing left to do. And like, I get it if you do a Sol Campbell. or a Paul Ince, or Paul Ince
A
infamously when he
Harry
was
Kane.
a Harry Kane to a lesser extent, but like,
By the way, Spurs fans, why are you celebrating a
what's wrong
Bundesliga
with you?
title?
What's wrong
What's
with
wrong
you?
with you? What's
You
wrong
can
with you?
you can be pleased for him, but
Weirdos.
like, don't crack open the champagne.
Yeah,
You
and did you
monsters.
forget about ED 15? What about Eric Dyer 15? You just
Yeah,
forgot about him?
God bless him and his lovely square head. But like, he didn't go to a rival. There isn't like they're not a rival. Like they
Oh.
play each other and they've had some big games in recent history, sure, but they're not rivals. If he went to Everton or Man United,
Yeah,
absolutely get it,
kill him.
thousand
Yeah.
percent. This is not that, and like it almost feels like he's also handled it fine. He hasn't talked about it publicly
Yeah.
beyond the video statement. He
It's
hasn't
not a
made a big
Raheem
drama of
Sterling
it.
situation. It's
It's
not even a
like
Raheem. Yeah.
there is no betrayal here. You have
No, I don't
not
get it.
been betrayed. It's like an amicable divorce, an amicable separation, but
Yeah.
like the friend has suddenly gone all out to destroy their life and like tell their boss that they're a terrible person and like, I don't know, burn the car. Like, why are you burning his car? He didn't
Yeah.
do anything. We just broke up. It was fine. We're gonna be. I don't get it.
Your analogy seems to have a little bit of truth and sarcasm behind it.
Yeah, to be fair, I slashed her tires. So what? That's a joke. I did. I didn't do that. She did slash mine. Anyway, I don't get it. I'll never get it. It's ridiculous. Grow up. Speaking of people who need to grow up, let's talk about Evangelos Marinakis, who is the owner of Nottingham Forest. Bearing in mind we don't want to get sued, so some things need to not go on the show. But he is a difficult person. He, of course, is the owner of Olympiacos as well as Rio Ave and Nottingham Forest. And under his stewardship, Olympiacos have won 7 domestic championships in a row. They won the Conference League. At Forest, he got them to the Premier League, stayed up in the Premier League, and now they're going to be in Europe for the first time in 30 years. So his ownership, taken without detail in the macro, is a positive thing for football
Yeah.
clubs.
Very invested.
He clearly is very invested, but maybe a bit too invested, maybe a bit too entitled to the point he's actually built himself a little throne at the City Ground to watch games, which is just a bizarre watch if you ever go there and see him sitting there, clinically obese, sitting in his own little king seat like Henry VIII near the end. But like wife number 6 levels. But like this weekend, he basically comes on the field at the end of the game, and there was an issue with Taiwo Awoniyi, and he was injured. He tried to come back on, but wasn't fit enough to come back on, and blah, blah, blah. So he comes on and essentially starts shouting at Nuno Espirito Santo, the manager, on the field at the end of the game. And I'm sure what happened
He
in
was hot.
private was probably a bit more aggressive than what we saw in public. Now, Nuno handled this, I thought, superbly well, incredibly diplomatically. But I saw this post from Gary Neville who said, quote, scandalous from the Forest owner. Nuno should go and negotiate his exit tonight. The Forest fans, players and manager do not deserve that. And as ever when Marinakis does something a little bit unprofessional, he then did an apology on the club website, and it was like he talked about passion and blah, blah, blah. What did you make?
Clattenburg? Did Mark Clattenburg respond?
No, he was too busy getting his wig work done. That's a big job. You've got to get that fringe done every 6 months. There's only so much donor hair to go around. Those flights to Turkey are expensive. But his teeth look great. That's the important thing. But like, what earth did you make to this? And what about the response of like Nuno should just quit?
Yeah, I don't agree with it. Listen, I think first and foremost, what he's done for the club, there's I think culturally bringing that club back and the investment of the money that he's brought into the team. And there was a moment where we thought, and again, conflicted. Dane Murphy is a really good friend of mine, and kind of his timeline there with Steve and everything that happened. There was a bunch of people that were sacrificed, and people forget. Like there was a moment where he and Todd Bowley, Marinakis and Todd Bowley, like they were competing for who was going to sign the most amount of players and the turnover of the roster. So he is certainly invested, and he's taken debt load and converted them into shares, and he's done a great job with the club. He really has. And I think there's this was a continuation of the frustration of the team being in a free fall.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back 6 weeks ago, you felt like they had all but confirmed a Champions League spot. Now they've confirmed a European spot because Brentford's not going to be able to catch them. There's a 7-point difference. So they're going to be in Europe. They're just going to most likely be in Conference League, not be in Champions League. And I forget where I had I'm trying to
Maybe
think.
Europa. Maybe if City win the FA Cup, it'll be Europa.
Yeah. So
good.
there's a way, right? If there's a will, there's a way. Here's the thing. I think everything goes sideways in the last moment. I think Taiwo and the medical staff need to have more honest conversations. You've got to give the medical staff more time to allow the player to make the decision if he can continue. And once the player says he can continue, then it's up to the medical staff to force the player to show that he can continue. He just can't say, yeah, I'm good. Because you still got to come around the corner, head down. And by that point, he broke down, right? So you could see the conversation with Nuno's assistant and trying to make sure via walkie-talkie that he's good to go. They say he's good to go. He makes the change, and then Taiwo breaks down. They play down for 10 minutes. They end up dropping points, and that's where Marinakis comes on the field. I wrote this during our show. There has to be a ruling and not just a standard. I think as we're seeing the influx of so many different cultural personalities in different countries and different backgrounds come in, there has to be an understanding that what is acceptable maybe at Olympiacos or acceptable in Greece is different than what's acceptable in Germany, different than Turkey, different than the Premier League. So there has to be, and I don't know if it's a byline, I don't know if it's a ruling, I don't know however we verbalize this, because as owner, he's going to have all access to anywhere. But there should be something that says there's a cooling off period.
Yeah.
That nobody you have to be registered to be on the bench. Like, here's my solution. Coaches, as coach, manager, assistant coaches, trainers, medical staff, whatever, and then players. Whoever is registered to be on the bench during the game should be the only ones to have access to the field. Meaning sporting director, owner can't come down from their perch, be pissed off, and run out and confront a referee. The way that Marinakis was going out, I was watching the game, he almost bypassed Nuno. Like, he was going, I don't know if he knew who he was mad at. I don't know if he knew who he's going for, but it felt like Nuno he said something, Nuno said something back, and Nuno handled it perfectly. Yeah. And I think that he brought him back down. Like, don't do anything stupid. I'll tell you what happened. Like, no, this can't happen. You could tell he was pissed. He wanted answers immediately. And that's what gajillionaires do, right? They are egotistical maniacs at times. So I think Nuno knows exactly who he is. I think he's probably had plenty of run-ins, that understands the fiery nature of when he can redline. I think he's handled it perfectly. I think he's as frustrating as Marinakis is, but I do think there's got to be something where this can't happen, because it just doesn't look right. And it puts everybody under that much more pressure, and allows, from a pundit's perspective, to say, bang, out of order, you should quit. Everybody owes an apology. Marinakis, he knows what he's doing, and I think we all judge that moment to be wrong. But anything more than that, he puts his hand up, he apologizes, I think everyone moves on.
I think that in this business in general, you are going to have to deal with billionaire megalomaniacs in every job you go to. Very rich people, very entitled people, and you have to manage upwards. He managed upwards very well there. What about, though, the fact that Nuno his reputation right now is sky high. It's higher now than when he left Wolves to go to Tottenham. This is peak in terms of Europe anyway. I don't know how he got on in Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to look it up. But like in Europe right now, his reputation is incredibly good. And if he decided right now to say, look, I don't want to deal with this nutter anymore, the kind of guy who built his own throne and beats up a TV screen in his private booth every weekend, so they've got to replace it every week, and comes on the field to admonish me, even though I've qualified his team for Europe for the first time in 30 years. Like, if he wanted to handshake and move on now, Nuno, he's going to be attractive to, Milan's always coming up. Why wouldn't Nuno be attractive for a club like Milan as opposed to Nottingham Forest? So doesn't he have to be a bit more like, bit careful, Marinakis? Because Nuno could go, cheers, mate. Ta-da.
Yeah. Nuno's an interesting one, man, because I think everyone kind of filleted his style of play at Wolves. And yet he was incredibly successful and effective. And I remember there was a month in which he was named manager of the month at Tottenham and then fired less than 2 months later.
Yeah.
And I think this has been a resurrection. Yeah, the whole Benzema thing over in Saudi. But I think this has been a resurrection of his reputation. And listen, if I'm following what you're leading with, there's going to be plenty of clubs that would be interested, should he be available, that Nuno Espirito Santo would have the opportunity to play European football with a couple of different clubs around the world. So I think what he's shown is outside of these last couple of weeks, right? The 3 losses and then the 2 draws. That an FA Cup, semifinal and all of this. It's a good manager.
Mm.
And his systems, he can figure out how to get the best of a system. And nobody thought, I mean, we all thought usually, like, we've seen this before, that teams do really well until like the Christmas period, and then all of a sudden they kind of flare off into the distance. But I would put Nuno in kind of like the Thomas Frank kind of conversation. I mean, Thomas Frank,
Who?
Thomas
Frank?
Frank,
Are you doing Father the Bride?
Thomas
Sure.
Frank, Thomas Frank.
Tom
Well,
Frank.
you guys also say Roberto Martinez. Roberto Martinez.
You did just say Thomas Frank. I mean,
Frank.
to be fair, it's you this time. It's not me.
Tomas Frank.
Thomas Frank.
By the way, 16 wins this season in the Premier
Yeah.
League. Mikel Arteta has 18.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some really good managers. And I don't, if he was out of work, I don't think he'd be out of work for that long.
One more question before we do a hero and villain of the week. Let me just ask you about LA Galaxy, because it's a wild story that, like, obviously you work MLS, so you know it in a lot more detail. But like, LA Galaxy are the most famous club around the world from America. You could probably put Miami in that now, but generationally, everyone who's alive
David
right now,
Beckham.
more
Yeah,
people know
Landon
Galaxy
Yeah,
than Miami, right? Certainly my generation. But like, last season, one MLS Cup were fantastic, and we spoke about them. Of course, it was a huge story. Start of this season, and people might not have been following this who listen to this show. 12 matches without a victory is obviously catastrophic, and there's a few reasons for it, which you've laid out for us previously, but we'll touch on them again here. But this weekend, to lose against the Red Bulls by 7 goals to 0. And I watched the last 20 minutes of this because someone was like, "You seen the scoreline here? You need to put this on." The 6th goal, the defending is so erratic. Red Bulls have like a 5-on-3. There's no defense at all. And the 7th goal is an all-timer. We used to have, when I was growing up, I'm sure you did too, a variant of like Danny Baker's Football Howlers. And it was like the most hilarious own goals. And there's some that go through the annals of history, like Lee Dixon lobbing his keeper from 30 yards. And the guy who kicks the ball against his own face and puts it in. Like all these amazing own goals. The own goal scored by Galaxy here for the 7th is in that mix. They literally just kick off from going 6 down. And the guy lobs his own keeper from like 30 yards. It's truly hilarious. What the sorry, Tim, is happening at LA Galaxy?
Yeah. Again, they went all in. And for Philip Anschutz, who is kind of the godfather of Major League Soccer, and at a time which not just past contraction, but into should the league shut down, Phil Anschutz, not completely single-handedly, but close to single-handedly was one of the few owners that kept this league alive. Last year at the start of the season, and bringing in Greg Vanney a couple of years ago from Toronto, in which they had like 4 MLS Cup finals in 5 years underneath his guidance with Bezbachenko before Bezbachenko went to Columbus. Vanney goes to LA, really difficult time. They bring in Will Kuntz, who was part of the success at LAFC. He comes across LA and goes to Galaxy, and immediately they started putting these pieces of the puzzle together. Ricky Puig comes from Barcelona. They go in, they spend Peck and Paintsel money, Joveljic up top. They've like roughly 20 million invested in one off season. They kind of stutter through the first half of the season, catch momentum, catch fire. They're heading into the final. Ricky Puig blows his knee. Brugman comes off the bench, and they win an MLS Cup trophy against the New York Red Bulls.
Yeah.
But subsequently, they had pushed the threshold from kind of I call it a budget, the MLS budget. It's not a salary cap because there's so many different mechanisms. So I use the budget. They pushed it to the extreme, like to the precipice of breaking the rules. And they did so really very, very savvy, very smart. Even brought in Marco Royce as a luxury piece, as a leader, experience in the locker room to kind of help with the emotion and the vibe. So they win. I'm of the belief I would love to see a mechanism in which an MLS team, when they win an MLS Cup trophy, is given like a secondary budget to keep the team together, almost as if they are getting like a $500 to $1 million bonus, to where it can alleviate some of the pressure. Because in these budgetary constraints, there's players that have bonus structures, and the more success you have in all-star appearances, MLS playoffs, finals, all of those things, your bonus structure then wraps into your next year base. So inevitably, you're going to have a 10 to 15% growth off the end of the season heading into next year. So that's why we're constantly talking about players being sold, players being traded, things that you don't want to see. Ricky Pooch is out. Marco Royce certainly hasn't helped. Jalen Neal traded to CF Montreal. Brugman, who came in for Ricky Pooch, was named MLS Cup MVP. He's traded to Nashville. Dejan Joveljic, who's your starting number 9, got you like 15 goals. He was the first cash for player trade to Sporting Kansas City for $4 million. And then Mark Delgado, probably the most important offseason loss, is traded from LA Galaxy to LAFC, which is wild because I think that's going to very quietly be one of the most important trades in Major League Soccer in the offseason. So all of these things, plus Marco Royce not working, Peck and Paintsel being injured.
They had to do this, Danny. Just to go back on the budget thing, they had to make these sales. They had to bring this money in because they were in a budget deficit.
Well, they were going to be in a slight budget deficit, but you also had certain players at the end of their contracts, like Joveljic, for example, was out kicking what his current contract was, so he's going to inevitably want a pay raise, and they couldn't give him that pay raise,
right?
And so they could give him. He wasn't going to get what he wanted, what his true value was in the open market. So then they're like, well, $4 million coming in would help us offset whatever. They go get Christian Ramirez to try to be a like for like type of player from Columbus, and that hasn't really worked out. So all of these things are going sideways. Plus, young players aren't matching the performance of last season at the end. Some of the leaders and cultural icons are gone. You've got a power vacuum because of injury. LAFC, by the way, when they lost at Columbus in the MLS Cup final, they started the next year without 5 starters and 2 substitutes. My math isn't great, but that's 7 guys that participated in an MLS Cup final weren't on the game day roster the next season. So there is a history of this happening. Okay, so as I say all of this, that game in New York, Greg Vanney goes to a 5-3-2, switches his formation. He ends up switching back to a 4 after things are going horrifically sideways. They quit on each other. They quit on the badge. They quit on their traveling supporters. So much so that I don't know if you caught at the end of the game, Greg Vanney didn't even let him in the locker room. It was like whole city. It was like on the field, Phil's leading, pointing, the whole Jimmy Bullard like fun, make a joke out of it later. Like that was a come to Jesus moment. I think in any other world, Greg Vanney probably would have been relieved of his of being coach. And we've already seen managerial changes so far this season. I have no backstory to this. This is just because of experience in Major League Soccer, being 48 years of age, being a part of this league since I was 20. I'm assuming that Greg Berhalter, I keep saying Berhalter. I'm assuming that Greg Vanney has already signed a new deal. He's in the final year of his contract based on the success of MLS Cup. I think that he has probably already signed a deal and it hasn't been announced. And I think this is a very interesting, squirrely situation now. Because if you are going to indeed fire Greg Vanney and he hasn't signed it, well, then that would make a lot of sense. But the longer that they are in this winless run and you're setting all of the wrong records and all of these players effectively aren't good enough. Because, for example, when I associate these names with LA Galaxy, right? Gabriel Peck, Joseph Paintsel, Ricky Pooch, right? You're like, oh yeah, no, 100% know those guys. Yeah. When I say the substitutes at New York were Mauricio Cuevas, Lucas Sanabria, Elijah Winder, Mateus Nascimento, Tucker Lepley, those aren't Galaxy guys. Those aren't Galaxy names.
I don't believe Tucker Lepley is a real name.
I played at UCLA. He's a kid that's part of the roster.
Is it like Solomon Wilcots and Hingleberry, McCringleberry?
McCringleberry. Don't wipe your butt. Don't want a McCringleberry. I just it's bad. It's bad. Now it's even worse than Ronnie Dyla in the Atlanta United situation right now. But I think as we use these data points, Peter Vermes was fired after 6 games, right? Longest tenure manager in charge in Major League Soccer from Sporting Kansas City. Caleb Porter in the New England Revolution had an exact mirror replica of a record. And they didn't fire him at the same time Peter Vermes was fired, gave him 2 more games. And after that second game, they got a result. And since then, they've rattled off like 4 wins in their last 6 matches. So there is something about momentum, and momentum will save players' jobs. It
Yeah.
will certainly save managers' jobs. And so there's something to be said about like not getting caught up in the fury of the moment. But certainly there's some significant issues right now for Greg Vanney and this coaching staff to figure out, which are insanely obvious because nobody had him. A lot of us didn't predict them to even be a playoff team, but we didn't predict for them to be this poor.
No.
So I always use the kind of analogy or the description. They've got to manufacture results. They certainly have to manufacture some momentum. But I was looking at, let me pop this up real quick. I was looking at their
Traffic Saturday, isn't it? I think.
Well, it's worse than that because they're staying on this East Coast swing.
Yeah.
Wednesday is on the road at Philadelphia. So New York to Philadelphia, not a lot of travel, but Bradley Carnell has this Philadelphia Union side operating as one of the best. They just came off a 2-2 draw at home against the Columbus Crew. Sunday at home against LAFC. That's the big Sunday night soccer embarrassment USA. And then it's at San Diego, home against San Jose, which is the highest scoring team in Major League Soccer, and then home against Real Salt Lake.
Yeesh.
It's a murderer's row. And
Yeah.
the margin for error is not a lot in the Western Conference. I mean, outside of Vancouver, LAFC is starting to fly, Minnesota United, Seattle Sounders, like it's pretty tight. It's pretty tight. So this is going to be interesting to see how Greg Vanney leads this group out of this issue right now.
Listen, before we go, we do a hero and a villain of the week. I've actually got 2 villains, so I don't know if you have a hero, but I've got a couple of fun villains for you.
Let's see. My hero. Oh, I know who I'm going to go. Brian White. Brian White, the Vancouver Whitecaps, as well as Sebastian Berhalter. These 2 guys have been monsters. I know I've talked to you about Jesper Sorensen, the Dane, coming over and probably being the perfect example of how everything can go right, even though you're not a big name manager. I can't name you a manager that's had a better start to the season for both domestic and international. Vancouver Whitecaps have beat Saprissa, they beat Monterrey, they beat Pumas, they beat Lionel Messi and Inter Miami to go to a CONCACAF Champions Cup final. They are top of the Western Conference table. They are absolutely flying. They gave up 2 early goals to LAFC last night in Vancouver. They responded. Brian White gets 2 goals. Sebastian Berhalter's been a monster. I pray for everyone listening to separate Sebastian Berhalter from Greg Berhalter. Sebastian is flying right now. He's one of the best midfielders in Major League Soccer, both sides of the ball, scoring goals, set pieces, service, all of these things. It's a very complicated midfield for Mauricio Pochettino, but he's got that Diego Luna in him. And Diego Luna's flying as well for Real Salt Lake. But I just hope that fans, because they couldn't really do it with Bob Bradley and Michael Bradley, if you look at Michael Bradley's resume, he has everything that U.S. soccer fans would want to see as a U.S. soccer player, starting domestically, going abroad, achieving success, 140 international appearances for the U.S. men's national team. That's what Michael Bradley was. And I don't think he gets the credit he deserves because his dad was named Bob Bradley. I just hope there's a world in which common sense would refrain from saying the only reason Sebastian Berhalter is going to get any opportunity is because his dad's Greg Berhalter. And that Sebastian Berhalter doesn't deserve the opportunity because his dad's Greg Berhalter. This kid has carved out an incredible early career on his own, not because of his dad. So I hope he gets the run he deserves in these games against Turkey and Switzerland and into the Gold Cup. And Brian White should absolutely be celebrated as one of these guys, path less traveled, a grinder, late 20s, scoring all these goals in Major League Soccer, that then deserves the opportunity to stick with the first team. He was fantastic in the January camp. He scored in the Nations League when a lot of players, he and Ajiman and Luna, were really the only ones to really step up from an MLS perspective. I hope these guys get a run in the upcoming weeks. It's 3 weeks' time against Turkey, then against Switzerland and Connecticut and Nashville. I'll be a part of that coverage. And my hope is these type of players get their chance underneath Pochettino because the European guys, they didn't do enough to keep these guys off the roster.
When's the squad announcement? Do you know the date for that?
I would assume it's in 2 weeks' time. I would assume it's heading into
around Champions League
not this
final,
Friday,
that sort of
maybe next Friday, I would assume.
Well, we'll talk about it when it happens. Hopefully he's in the squad. And to be fair with Berhalter, it'll be fine. I think the nepotism bar has been set so high by the kids of the president. It's fine. You can do what you want now. Listen, talking of villains, I have a
You
couple
couldn't
of
help
villains.
yourself.
No, I
You
couldn't.
just can't.
I couldn't. The moment you said scumbag nepotism, I went there. What can I say?
I mean,
Listen,
I think you used those two words. I don't think I did.
yeah, but I don't get a vote, so it's fine. I can do what I want. Listen, two quick villains for you. And then if you have one, great. But I've got to do these because they're so funny. So Ruben Dias this weekend. Man City could not score against Southampton. They had loads of terrible crosses and they were absolutely appalling and they didn't really create many chances. And Southampton got to 12 points. And Ruben Dias did a post-match interview, the City defender, where he was so pissy. Like
Pissed.
he was so like pathetic, and it's like frustrating to play a team like them. They don't even try to play. And Southampton's social media admin really got hold of this, and they posted a video of Ruben Dias complaining about Southampton. Then over one of those terrible, like those pan pipe pieces of music where the guy plays the pan pipe badly, they played all the terrible crosses and terrible shots that went over the end line that missed Haaland. It was like
That's amazing.
over these terrible bits. And a great comment from someone on social media from a Southampton fan called Jack Buchanan commenting on Ruben Dias. And he said this, and I love this so much, I've just got to read it to you. He said, quote, "They don't even try to play," end quote, going on to say, "My brother in Christ, we can't play football. That's why we got 11 points going into this game, you absolute melon," which I thought was just
amazing.
an amazing, amazing comment. I love that. So Ruben Dias would be my villain of the week, and my sort of dark hero of the week would be the Saints' social media. My other villain is Thomas Muller, because two things. Number one,
he told a great joke. He told a great joke.
So let me do the joke, right?
Okay.
So number one, he goes off the field during the game and takes like 10 minutes to go off hugging everyone. You might say, oh, legend, whatever. But also like, my brother in Christ. You could have done this in the full-time whistle. The game was still going live. Anyway,
Well, I think that's why they did it, to give him the opportunity to soak in.
But like, he's had 20 years of the soaking it in. There's a proper game of football here. It's not a charity match. I'm sure he'll get a testimonial.
He should have brought his horse out. He should have brought the horse out on the field.
Down the leg. But the joke, so he takes the microphone, having been like bathed in Bavarian beer as they do, and he says,
well, at least they didn't like that, by the way.
No, I'm sure he didn't.
Oh.
I'm sure many of them didn't. So let me read you this. So basically, he takes the microphone and he says this. I'll read it to you live. I'm going to play the video because I can't get the transcript, but on the video. So he says this. I was looking for a joke to say goodbye, says Muller standing on the field, but I couldn't find an appropriate one that I liked. Then I looked for something slightly slow, spicier about funerals. Okay, you ready? He does a nice little laugh. And he goes on, everyone's like, what? Why is he doing this? A father is dying at home. The three children are standing at his bedside. Suddenly, the smell of his favorite cake wafts in from the kitchen where the mother is baking it. He says, son, please bring me one last piece of my favorite cake before I die. That would be my last wish. Then he comes back from the kitchen without the cake. The father says, what's going on? Well, mum says it's for after the funeral. End of joke.
Very dry German joke. And by the way, had everybody in stitches. Like the whole stadium was in stitches.
Just amazing. Everything about it. I love everything about it. The most German way to leave from the most German man I could possibly imagine. Loved it.
I think he's MLS bound.
Do you?
I do.
He's not that slow.
I think that I could see a world in which maybe Olivier Giroud leaves LAFC by mutual consent and that Thomas Muller signs.
Yeah, he's done, Giroud, isn't he? He can't move anymore.
Dude, we did the game against San Jose and he just ripped up San Jose's back line. It was the best game that we had seen. I think we all kind of agreed as broadcasters it was the best game we'd seen him play. He was phenomenal.
A finale though? Is that like the end of it?
Well, it was 3-man back line and this guy Bruno Wilson, he just bodied him the entire game and he was hold up play, connectivity, passing and moving. The Nathan Ordaz kid is so dynamic and he's all over the place, kind of like Matty Bogusz last year who was sold to Cruz Azul in the offseason. I could see I could see Thomas Muller in a couple different teams in a couple different cities. And I would not be surprised if there's been some high-level negotiations for him to come to Major League Soccer. I don't know if he's city driven in terms of an experience, but obviously Bastian Schweinsteiger being in Chicago, there's a lot of rumors and talk about Kevin De Bruyne going to the Chicago Fire. You also got Inter Miami, who's going to have that window. Them and Seattle Sounders are going to have that window that's open before the start of FIFA Club World Cup. I mean, could you imagine if like Seattle made a run at like Cristiano Ronaldo and like, hey man, we got FIFA Club World Cup. You interested? But you've got to keep the player for the year. So that would complicate some things. But it'll be really interesting to see with the international window popping open, all of these teams that get to participate in the FIFA Club World Cup, they get a week to add whoever they want to add. So be interesting. But I could see Thomas Muller running. I mean, you watched him play the other day.
Doing stand-up in Chicago.
Hey, is this thing on, everybody? No, I think he's still. I think he's agile enough that I still think he can play in a couple different positions. Where the athleticism in this league, which I don't think is talked about enough, I don't think he'd come here to die. I think he would still find a way to succeed, depending upon the team that he's playing for.
He might die on stage, I guess. When I told my mother I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, she laughed. Well, nobody is laughing now, huh?
That's pretty good.
That's the Week in the Tackle podcast for this week.
I'm laughing.
That's Brian Dunseth, who basically had 3 incredibly weak.
Oh, it's good. It took me a while. I just wasn't. I wasn't being honest with you.
Yeah, you're a liar. They were just ketchup. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I've been Tom Rennie, who can take the hot sauce, but I haven't got to prove it because West Ham are so good. Tim Horsley produced the program. Subscribe to the show on all the platforms you're not subscribed to the show on. And we'll see you next week.